Chapter 2. Who am I? Ugh, I winced. I rose my chin slightly and placed my hand against my forehead. I opened my eyes slowly and stared out at the sky of an orange and red. A chill of air rushed past as I stared up into the openness. I blinked and tilted my head to the left. Pain traveled across my head that caused me to flinch. I gazed over to my left. The gray of the road took the majority of my line of sight, along with several small shops, maybe a strip mall. I turned my head to the right, to see a large wooden pole with a breaker box hung on it. What's going on here? I sat up, with my hand pressed hard against my forehead, to try and relieve some of a mind-numbing headache. I searched the area for any clue as to where I was. How did I get here? "Hurry up!" a girl's voice rang. My eyes darted to my right. A young girl, maybe 15 or 16, ran towards me, watching slightly behind herself. She wore a dirty blue t-shirt with a green belt and short black skirt. Black combat boots came a few inches below her knee. That gave her no trouble as she ran. Wires were tightened around her wrists as if they were bracelets, with a single black cord across her neck. Her eyes were hazed with a coffee color. Her pink hair was tied into short pigtails, with a black ski cap cutting the color off at bangs that appeared to be cut herself. "Why are you so slow?" she called behind her. She ran straight for me. "Well, if I had some help, I might be a little faster," a Hispanic voice came from behind her. Another girl, around the same age, maybe a little older, appeared over the horizon. Her hair was messy, tied in a bun with pencils sticking out of her tangled brunette locks. Her eyes were narrowed and determined with a dark gray coloring. She seemed focused and annoyed on something other than the pink-haired girl. She wore a black tank top against her larger chest, rubber bands and duct tape covering the girl's arms. Lastly, she wore tan commando pants that met her black sandals and purple-painted toenails. I noticed the Hispanic girl's hands. She held two L-shaped objects. They almost looked like guns. She growled, firing at something that eluded me. However, instead of a bullet, a blue orb flew out that looked as if it were covered in light itself. A bright blue light flashed as the sphere expanded after hitting the ground, creating a small explosion. I yelped from the unexpected noise. The pink-haired girl finally met up with me, but it seems I wasn't her target. She ran over to the breaker. She threw a purple bag onto the concrete next to her. She quickly unzipped the bag, pulling out a computer. The girl removed the black cord from her neck, opening up the metal case of the power box. She plugged in the cable and then attached it to her computer, where her fingers began to type furiously. I sat in total confusion and loss as to what was going on. The pink-haired girl looked over at me, as if it was the first time she had noticed me. "Hey, want to help me out?" she asked in a sweet voice. I did not reply, only sat in a loss. "Here, protect me while I download the info I need, and I'll share it." She pulled a knife from her pocket and threw it over to me. I looked down at the strange weapon. It wasn't a regular knife, or at least not anymore. It kind of looked like a taser was attached to the metal, giving it a blue glow. I picked up the knife by the rubber handle, looking at it with curiosity. "What on earth?" I questioned. I turned over the knife to get a look at every conceivable angle. The pink-haired girl looked back towards me. "Get up and fight." "What?" I asked. My eyes flung over to her with the crazy request. She perked up, turning back towards the Hispanic girl. "Hey, Alice, we got a blank over here." "Oh, perfect. Just what we needed. Now I could really use some help over here," she huffed. I looked over to the girl who seemed to be fighting nothing. It just looked like she was dancing around with a gun, firing wildly into the air. "What is she doing?" I inquired. "Fighting the Zeros. Look, I know this is all new and you're really confused in it all, but I need your help, okay?" She seemed worried. Her eyes looked all around us. She stood from the computer for a moment, turning to face me. The pink-haired girl reached across her back, pulling forward a staff, maybe 2 feet, with tasers attached at both ends. Her eyes locked on me. I gulped and stared wide-eyed at the girl. Sweat rolled down the side of my head. She threw the staff to my right. A squeal ringed in my ears as she hit whatever she was aiming for. My eyes blurred for a moment before a cloud of purple smoke filled my vision. I looked around me as I could now see what the two girls had been fighting. Creatures, varying in size and shape, appeared around us. I looked over to the Hispanic girl. At least 6 monsters surrounded her. They all took a form much like dogs, but they looked more demonic and a lot scarier. I jumped as I could now see what the fuss was about. "Now fight or die," the pink-haired girl smiled in a creepy manner, returning to her computer. I stood from the ground, with the knife given to me. "What do I do?" I asked, much like a confused child. "Just protect me until the download is complete," she explained. Great. I scanned over the several black blobs that seemed to mush and reconfigure their shapes as we stood in a standoff. One formed into what looked like a rabbit. It looked almost cute. A hiss came from the creature as it jumped towards me, with razor teeth ready to strike. "Okay, not cute," I yelled, stabbing toward the animal, cutting it in half. Ones and zeros appeared where the rabbit had been before, disappearing into the dusky air. "Wow," I said. "How much longer, Eve?" Alice called. She fired at one of the dogs and avoided the bite of another. 90% complete, Eve answered. "Can you make that go any faster?" Alice barked. "Well, I don't know. Maybe if you didn't turn my processor into a toaster, I could have," Eve laughed disturbingly. "I put it back. Not correctly," she sang. "Not to be rude, but can anyone tell me what's going on?" I asked. I killed another of the zeros. Can we please do this at a better time?" the Hispanic growled. She then killed a dog. 97. Just a little longer, Eve called. A bird blob formed from the goo. It flew towards me. I dodged a hit to the face, and instead let the beak cut against my arm. I hissed, carving the bird with my blue blade. My eyes darted to the small wound. Now I'm really confused. Red drizzled down my arm, but it wasn't real blood. It looked almost digital, as if my skin were made up of tiny squares around the cut. What is going on? 100, Eve shouted. She stuffed her laptop back into her purple bag along with the black cord, wrapping it around her neck. "Come on, Lank, and we'll explain everything." Eve smiled with an overly peppy attitude towards me. To be honest, she's pretty creepy, but I need answers. "Alice," Eve signaled. Alice nodded and ran over to us. I followed the two girls away from the mall down a careless street. I looked back as we ran and noticed the zeros weren't chasing us. They don't seem to want to leave those boxes. Speaking of which, what did the girls mean by download? Also, what's a blank? So many questions ran through my head as we ran. Time passed, and I continued to follow the crazes in silence. Soon night had fallen, and we reached a neighborhood. I searched the streets with interest. Besides these two and those blob things, I haven't seen a single person or animal. Where am I? I keep asking, but no reply had surfaced. Eve stopped running as we came to a 2-story home. It was a white coloring and looked slightly worn down compared to the other homes in the area. A large fence covered the yard with a blue glow. It was the kind that would wrap prison yards with signs covering the yard. "Go back, no food, game over," all written in bold lettering. A nervous pit filled my stomach as I scanned the house. Alice walked to a panel on the gate of the fence. Her fingers moved swiftly against the keypad that looked as if it had been taken off a garage door. The blue light died out from the fence line as Alice typed. I stared at the girl, unsure of what to do next. Eve, however, had no issue in that field. She quickly sprinted towards the gate, climbing it much like a monkey, avoiding the barbed wire with practiced technique. Alice was next. She slipped between the two pieces of gate attached poorly together, but enough to keep anyone out who wasn't looking for that exact spot. Eve motioned for me to come next. I gulped, moving over to where Alice had gone in. I squeezed through the chain, hitting the yard hard. Alice huffed. She walked to a switch on the porch of the home. She switched on a dial that came from a kitchen timer. The blue light returned to the fence. "What is that exactly?" I asked, and pointed towards the blue. "That's what electricity looks like in this world," Eve smiled as she fidgeted with the door. "This world?" I choked. I followed the girl into the house. The inside of the house looked just as mad as the outside. Wires traveled the length of the ceiling with several pieces of metal scrap laying against the wall. From where I stood, I could see down a short hallway into a kitchen. The table was round and wooden, but was covered with piles of junk, ranging from empty cans to smashed TVs. I looked to my right to see a sandy, carpeted staircase, to an upstairs that just looked dark. Eve walked into the kitchen, taking a left turn to somewhere I couldn't see. Alice pushed my back forward, motioning me to walk. I did what I was told and walked deeper into the crazy. Alice drove me to the left and through an archway in the kitchen to a large living room with 2 couches. An armchair with a white coloring sat in the center of the room. I walked to the center of the living room. A high ceiling fan lit the area with a soft glow. Eve lay across the sofa to my right. I noticed that several notebooks filled the carpeted regions, along with many crumpled balls of paper. "So, blank, I bet you have some questions," Eve hummed playfully. "Can you stop calling me blank? I honestly have no idea if it's an insult or not, but I really don't like it." "We call new players blanks due to the loss of memories," Alice sneered. "I'm not a blank." "Okay, I think it's an insult, maybe." Eve laughed like a child. "What's your name, then?" "It's..." I stopped. "What is my name? I can't remember. I only remember waking up on that street. Was there anything before that?" "See, you're a blank," Alice barked. "If you want to know your name, pull out your cell phone. It should be carved into the back," Eve said. She pulled out her own. It was a square phone that could easily fit into the girl's small hand. She turned over the shiny front to a back, where the name Evet was carved creepily into the gray. Alice did the same. Her phone was a large touchscreen, with a white case with a tree painted on the case. Cut center by the name of Alice. I reached into my jean pocket to find nothing. I noticed a gray jacket with black strips on both sides, going from the shoulder down to the arm length of the torn cuffs. I reached into the hoodie's pocket to find it empty as well. "I don't have one," I concluded. "You can't survive in this world without one. Are you sure? He always leaves a phone," Eve explained. "Yes, I'm sure. And who's he?" I questioned, and checked again. "He's the programmer, the game maker. He put us all here," Eve answered. "Programmer? Like in a game?" "She said game maker, didn't she? Who done it? The goal of this world is to discover who put us here. We have to figure out his true identity before it's too late," Alice added to the conversation. "Too late?" I inquired. "Before we're 21, a male voice spoke up. I turned to the archway to see a boy who looked older than the other girls. He was a tall guy, maybe 6'5". His limbs were long and tired-looking. He appeared as if he had just gotten up. His hair was a night black with an uncombed tangle to it. Black locks fell across his green eyes, who seemed annoyed but also seemed as if they couldn't bother with dealing with any of us. He wore a solid white t-shirt with blue jeans and a tan belt. I noticed his fingernails were chewed down to the nub, and his eyes gave me the impression that he hadn't been sleeping much. "When a player reaches 21 or is killed by a zero or other player, it's game over," he said, as if it were rehearsed. "Game over?" "Your body is found," he answered. The man pulled out a cell phone that read HAL. It was a keyboard-based phone, with a tiny screen in black. HAL read, "The rules of this game are simple. Survive. Each player has until their 21st birthday to discover who I am. Each of you holds an important skill to win my game. These skills become your screen name, and will appear on any message board concerning you along with the image of your face, as to not confuse who is who. The goal is to find clues scattered across this world. When a player finds a clue, part of his or her memory will be returned. Basic needs are still required to live, such as eating and sleeping. When a clue is discovered, money, along with vital information as to my identity, will be rewarded to that party. Money can be used to buy food and supplies. If a player is to steal, kill, or find a clue, their rank will increase on the watchboard. The top 3 ranked players will then have a bounty placed upon their head for other players. If a player's bounty gets too high, I may just come after you myself. Only with one team can you have the hopes of discovering me and returning to your normal lives. Good luck, players. Live or die. It's all up to you. The Game Maker. If we don't play, we die," Hal finished. "How do you know so much?" I asked. Hal looked at me with a deadly glare. "I'm player 1. I was the first in this world, and I plan to leave it." "Eve, take him to the junk room upstairs. He can make a room out of it later," Alice commanded. "Yes, miss," Eve laughed, saluting comically. "Follow me, blank," Eve smiled, walking to the front. I followed, still trying to digest what had just happened. Eve walked with a small skip in her step. How could anyone be happy here? Those rules, they're made to kill us. It's not like I have a choice, though. I have no memory of who I am or were. I'm just blank. Eve showed me to the first room on the right of the long hallway. I counted 5 doors, all shut so the world couldn't see what they held. I opened the room, jumping back as crap fell out. Wires and panels, clothing, cans, and I think that was a bar of soap at one point, covered the floor of the room, stacking up at least a foot. Well, I guess I get why they called it a junk room. I stared forward to the opposite wall of the small room. A cracked mirror rested across the wall, showing my reflection. I am tall, not as tall as Hal, but I'm at least 6 foot. My hair is shaggy with coffee coloring. falling into my blue eyes that seemed almost gray. My skin is snowy with a slight tan. Apparently I hadn't gone outside much in my old life. I wore a green t-shirt with short sleeves, reaching my blue jeans. The gray jacket still wrapped around my thin torso, making me look even skinnier than I was. I'm not very muscled. Maybe I'm smart then? Or I could just not like exercising. But I'm skinny. Anorexic? Nah, I still look a healthy weight. I'm like 15 maybe? 16? Eve noticed me staring at the mirror with wonder. Get a room, you two, she joked. Eve walked around me, down the hall. I watched her walk to the last room on the left side of the hall. She paused before opening the door wide. Hey, I think I'm going to call you John, she called curiously. John? Why? I asked. John Doe, 'cause we don't know who you are, Eve giggled. I smiled lightly, seeing her reasoning. I like it. She smiled warmly and walked into her room. She closed the door. I sighed and walked more in depth into this junk. I noticed a pillow and towel within the pile of useless garbage. I closed the entrance to the storage room. There had to be a way, any way to be comfortable. I lay, trying to avoid the sharper pieces of metal in the rubble. I looked up at the white ceiling in the white painted room. My name is John Doe, and I've woken up in a game of whodunit, designed by a killer, and I'm sleeping in a storage room of 3 teenagers who are completely crazy. Well, this is gonna be fun.